I knew I would go to college because my mother instilled in me that education was the way up and out. What I didn't know is that between my mom and I, we would miss out on 2 decades of compounding interest on wealth while paying down debt. Most households don't have $1,000 of savings. They certainly don't have tens of thousands of dollars, with the cost of college outstripping inflation by 4-fold. If we have made socioeconomic mobility largely contingent upon a degree, we also need to recognize that financing that dream is the norm. First, pay down debt. When 100% of that debt is paid down, do they move into savings and retirement savings? Works its greatest magic in the first 10 years. There was a recognition that student debt is a huge blocker to wealth creation. It was really difficult and daunting to become debt-free.
Student debt in America is a $1.7 trillion problem, not because of the balance alone, but the ripple effect that debt has on every other financial decision a person makes. Whether to buy a home, start a business, have a kid, or even retire with dignity. 44 million Americans are carrying the weight of that right now. But we live in a society that has just recently started talking about money, while the wealthy have had access to financial guidance for generations. My guest today has spent the last decade working to change that. Laurel Taylor is the founder and CEO of Candidly, the financial guidance platform helping employers deliver personalized financial wellness at scale. She's an MIT graduate, Texas native, inventor of the 401k for student debt, and one of Fintech's most relentless founders. Laurel has raised more than $40 million to build Candidly and reshape wealth management for the generations ahead. And today, the company is entering its next chapter. It recently announced 6 new AI capabilities that expand personalized financial guidance far beyond student debt, with the capabilities to serve 1 in 2 U.S. workers. Laurel, welcome back to Humans of Fintech.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm thrilled to be here.
Happy 10 years. How does it feel?
It feels like we're just getting started,
right?
In so many ways. So it feels like it has been a big chapter, but really exciting chapters ahead.
Thinking about reporting on Candidly and your evolution for the last 10 years, I think every founder starts by believing in something that the rest of the world and the market hasn't fully caught up to yet. For Candidly, when you first started, what was that initial belief and how has it evolved over this last decade?
Yeah, so the initial belief and how it's evolved over the last decade, we are steadfast. Initial belief really was and is an observation that there is this very strange category gap in financial services, in employee benefits around education financing and student debt. That's odd because, as you described, we're at 1.7 trillion and growing. It's the second largest liability in our economy. And yet, when we think about where we experience solutions around how to send our kids to college, how to save for college, how to pay down student debt, which 70% of graduates today have student debt, it's traditionally been outside of our banking relationship, outside of our relationship with employee benefits, really outside of the system. When I founded Candidly because I have personally lived the problem. It was really difficult and daunting to become debt-free. And while I knew I would go to college because my mother instilled in me that education was the way up and out, what I didn't know is that between my mom and I, we would miss out on 2 decades of compounding interest on wealth while paying down debt. And I was leading a global business unit for Google and really marveling at the employee benefits they provide, like tuition reimbursement. But there was this big gap in the industry to address the education financing labor complex because the degree is required to get the job for most jobs. And that continuity is really part of the system that I recognized that there was still a lot of shame around those who exit the system with student debt. And we needed to normalize and have candid conversation about that.
It's interesting because you just said candid conversation, which makes me think of your name. Did that have anything to do
Yes,
with it, really?
It did. So
to have candid conversations about your financial wellness.
Yes, to normalize because most households don't have $1,000 of savings. They certainly don't have tens of thousands of dollars with the cost of college outstripping inflation by fourfold. Really to normalize that if we have made socioeconomic mobility largely contingent upon a degree, we also need to recognize that financing that dream is the norm. And rather than treating it as abnormal or atypical or outside the system, really acknowledge this is a structurally stubborn system that is going to continue to persist here in this country until there are a number of changes that come to fruition.
I hope you don't mind my recent phrasing. I've decided to put the proper respect on your name as the inventor of the 401k, basically for student debt, right? To be able to go into exactly a role, a fresh grad, going to Google, being able to have a portion of their paycheck garnished essentially to start paying off student debt while they are, investing in their future at the same time. That simultaneously, why wait for one or the other, which is what some, a one or two financial gurus might think or do or say. I've spent years reporting on this rise of AI and agentic and, across financial services. Where are you seeing, this technology changing financial guidance the most? Because now that this agentic AI conversation is here, it feels like now we can accelerate the conversation now that the technology is, catching up to what you've known for the last 10 years.
Yes. Well, thank you. It's an honor to be framed as the inventor of the 401k for student debt. We call it the student loan retirement match. And for many years, we've worked on the Hill to really shout from the rooftops this sequential versus simultaneous progress. And actually my alma mater, MIT Age Lab, conducted a study to show those who have student debt move through their finances sequentially. First, pay down debt. When 100% of that debt is paid down, do they move into savings and retirement savings? But of course, we all know compounding interest works its greatest magic in the first 10 years. So there was a recognition that student debt is a huge blocker to wealth creation. And with the passage of Secure 2.0, which went live on 1/1/24, we have translated smart policy into practice by enabling employers to act on that bipartisan legislation. So while employees pay down their student debt, their student loans, they can receive a retirement match into their retirement savings plan on those payments. And that was really the original mission and vision of Candidly, is enabling hardworking Americans to go beyond student debt into wellness and wealth through simultaneous action. What's so exciting about AI capabilities, it's multi-factor in that, one, we have a new interface that is conversational. To have candid conversation in a judgment-free, empathy-rich way enables us to move with the user. So in the past, we thought about static product pages built for the masses, and we looked at funnels, and we looked at conversions and clicks. Now we're actually having a live conversation. And in that live conversation, what we've observed and what we've always known was that the decision to pay student debt or to save in a 529 plan or an Invest America account or to contemplate when to begin to lean into 401k as soon as possible, please. But also how to achieve goals, really optimizing for the whole of someone's life versus a silo. And optimizing for the whole and the whole person and the whole of your dreams requires holistic guidance.
Yes.
So now that we have this simple interface, we can invoke deep, deterministic domain intelligence in 401k, in student debt, in Trump accounts, in college planning. And that enables us to have a holistic conversation optimizing for the whole and actually create alchemy. And we have received a patent on our algorithm and methodology for optimizing for the whole, which is called ALCA, because that's our job, is to create alchemy. When a user gives us 30 seconds, 2 minutes to move beyond and go beyond, because once you go beyond in that one moment, now we've changed an entire trajectory.
To the point of, exactly, if we're going to have a society built on the premise that you have to have X, Y, and Z right degrees or certain criteria to be able to move up in your, wealth in a certain way, then exactly we have to have these large scale technologies that enable that to even be real and possible, which hasn't been the case in the past. Trust has been a defining word in almost every fintech narrative, story, conversation that I've covered this year. Candidly has earned the trust of the employer, the financial institution, and even down to the individual consumer. You love to do things simultaneously, of course. So you're doing it all at the same time in one technology. And for the folks that don't know, right, that's how Candidly works, right, is through the financial institution, through the employer, in that very B2B tech way. Mm-hmm. But you have invented that large scale technology that enables that to be possible through all those institutions. And even so, as you grow and expand and you're able to do that even with more financial institutions, even as an entrepreneur, I think to myself like, wow, I look forward to opening like my business bank account one day and being able to have like Candidly tell me, right? Like, what are the right moves? Like, what's the thing to do? Okay, payroll's coming, whatever, what have you. And that to me is the future. That's what's so exciting. But there is this trust element that you spoke to. And I know you work with some of the largest financial institutions in the world, from Fiserv to Salesforce. And those are so important because they're the ones holding all of our data. I guess I'm curious, how have you thought about just building trust at every layer of the ecosystem? Because now we're getting kind of riddled with a lot of AI information from the big tech world that can make that trust feel a little scary, right? It's like it can feel scary to give ChatGPT my bank account information. Are they going to tell me the right thing? Yes. I don't know. Do they know me the best?
Sure. Such an incredible question, and it's multi-layered.
Yes.
When I founded Candidly, the vision was exactly as you described, which is to meet workers where they work, bank, and experience financial services, to meet end users. And the vision was B2B from the very beginning. So we first started working with employers. We were able to evidence demand and need to address this category gap of education financing and student debt to the largest financial services companies in the world. And it is an enormous privilege to be the partner and provider for Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Charles Schwab, Empower, Vanguard, PNC, Lincoln Financial Group, Guild, TIAA, et cetera. And to your point, that trust has to be earned every day and in every interaction with the end user, with the employer, with the distribution partner, the largest financial services companies in the US. Part of what's required in order to do that is really being able to evidence from exactly as you described, from what the industry, as we know, calls vendor risk and information security, SOC Type 1, Type 2, NIST, excellence, our payments, because we also manage flow of funds and movement of dollars at a large scale. And to become embedded within the precious product experience that serves the plan sponsors and employers that our partners serve, and then down to the end user, we really have to obsess over 3 different customers: the end user, the employer, and the enterprise distribution partner, and what is required by all 3 of those stakeholders. It's a different requirement at each layer. What has been born from the 10 years of deep verticalization of experience, not only in the category of education financing and student debt, is learning how to integrate into these very large enterprise distribution partners, and the integration from an outlink to an SSO to a widget to a full platform. But it was really enabled us to be a student for a decade of what I call the sacred truths of the enterprise. The sacred truths, the things that must be and will always be forevermore. So if we're enabling a large financial institution to unlock their data and their distribution advantage, what we have to perform is deterministic financial calculations that are precise and predictable every time, with decision traces and audit trails that the compliance and the risk team can get behind to say, Okay, AI is the probabilistic, the conversation layer. But when we return to Nicole information on what it means for her to take an action right now in her 401k, we know that it's our investment methodology that's being invoked into that conversation. And we have vetted the model, the tools, the skills, the scripts, and we know with precision that it's delivering the predictable mathematical calculation and output that we have approved, and that we're monitoring that literally in every turn.
Yeah. Is there like a list?
There is a list.
What is the list?
There is a list. You know, it's funny. I was thinking this weekend, I was like, I need to write about this. Like the 10 commandments of the enterprise.
Yes, I know. You can write it in your Substack, and then we should repurpose it in my newsletter, honestly.
Thank you. So I actually just started a Substack last week. That is about who we are, going beyond, always been the mission, not a pivot, it's the plan. And now leveraging that decade to go beyond. Now with AI, this advent of this incredible technology that we have as builders while we're building, and what has to be true for the enterprise, which is different for consumer. Really, I think this is a huge challenge. What we're talking about right now is a huge challenge for the enterprise, because when OpenAI comes out with ChatGPT in their retail banking experience, it's also a shot across the bow for the entire industry. If you're sitting on data and if you have distribution, it's not enough to have those things. We have to unlock the data in a way that drives customer-facing value, going beyond internal efficiency gains through AI into customer-facing value. But the number one sacred truth, which you just spoke to, is that the trust can never be tarnished, because that is the thing that the institutions that we have worked so hard to gain. And so ultimately, it's about the math and the enterprise harness that we've built. Whether FIs leverage our enterprise harness, it's a different hurdle that must be met for these large enterprises to move into customer-facing AI-enabled experiences.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, this to me, it's everyone is talking about being AI native, and, but at the end of the day, being AI native isn't something that you just like declare, as we've seen. It is something that you earn. I think that these sacred truths that you hold are a part of these foundations that you have to build in order to make all of that possible, in order to say, oh, I've actually truly fundamentally built a proprietary technology that is AI native and is doing all of the things in terms of not only are you hitting an innovation, but you're hitting on the regulation and all of that. And a part of some of your recent announcements have also been the Candidly Intelligence Center, expanding your platform well beyond student debt, which of course we just had to hit and, give people the context. You had student debt, you focused on that, you kind of perfected that, and now but exactly, it was always the plan.
Yes, always the plan.
Always the plan to get to go bigger.
Yes.
What is the bigger vision tying all of the capabilities together with Candidly Intelligence Center, this new era, the big vision?
Yes, and really the big vision is simplicity, which is a user being able to come into one conversation to have that holistic guidance, versus what I've learned about the industry is the fragmentation has created mass dysfunction.
Yeah, you said a mouthful there, sister.
Yes. And so it's hard for us. We're consumers. We have to go into 40 different experiences. So what do I do with my 401k? What do I do with my investments? What do I do with breaking the cycle so that my niece doesn't graduate with student debt? But one is interdependent on the other. And we're really excited about the capabilities that we now have at our disposal to, again, really leverage the data that employers have on their employees, that the institutions have on their end users, to be able to bring that simplicity to the user to guide them through informed decision making. So we built the composable stack of configurable AI agents, and they're really beyond agents or capabilities, and there's a 4-layer stack to our capabilities, but that enables us to, again, be able to really listen to what the user's trying to solve for. What's also that's just super exciting is that form factor we've created a state-aware agent harness. Because what we learned in listening into these anonymous conversations across 200 states, the user is in 4 states. And the artifact that we return or the language that we return has a different impact on the outcome based on what state the user's in and how we intervene in that conversation.
Finance doesn't just move money. It reveals what matters. And right now, what matters is AI. We're watching AI reshape everything. How we build, how we work, how we make decisions. But fintech is where it actually shows up. In payments, in fraud, in lending, in the systems we rely on every single day. And in 2026, the conversation isn't about hype anymore. It's about what's real, what works, what scales, and what actually drives outcomes. Agentic systems, intelligent infrastructure, AI that doesn't just assist, but operates. If you want to understand where this is all going, not in theory, but in practice, there's only one place to be. FTW San Francisco, where the builders, operators, and investors shaping this next chapter of fintech actually come together. Because fintech isn't just part of the AI story, it's where it all comes to life. So, if you want to see what's next, you need to be in this room. I'm Nicole Casperson with Fintech is Femme, and I'll see you at FTW San Francisco. The complexities are very real. And I think that what is also amazing is I think just there is a level of timing, if you will, right? You know, for example, the Invest America accounts, they only recently opened for contributions, yet Candidly was ready with guidance almost immediately.
Yes.
What do you think that says about the way that you've built the platform, and why does that speed matter? Because I do think there's this balancing act. I feel it myself as an entrepreneur of like you wanting to get there, wanting to do things as fast, as quickly as possible and be there right in the perfect timing for your end user, but also trust takes time and you want to be precise and you have to, and there is the margin for error for us is non-existent. Like we can't make a mistake. How does that like speed and kind of trust element, has that come together for you? Like how have you kind of built that?
The margin for error is 0.
Yeah.
Completely agree. And actually, again, it goes back to that 10 years of deep verticalization. So what did not feel like a gift at the time, which did not feel like a gift, it was the policy around student debt changing continuously for half a decade. Yeah. So those in the student debt, right, know that there were different federal programs on and off the shelf and different deadlines and timeframes and rolling changes every 90 days. So what that meant for us from a product perspective was we had to build programmatic ability to turn smart policy into practice down at a very specific calculation. So we applied that same capability to Invest America and Trump accounts, which is great. We've got new policy. How do we translate that into practice? How do we create that programmatic capability through our deterministic capabilities, which is a massive shift when we think about the industry, legacy systems, technical debt, where it takes sometimes years for legacy systems to operationalize policy changes, which is now built in the architecture from the beginning in the design is to be able to move with that shifting policy and actually be almost real time in the release.
As we talked about, right? Like I think one of the most compelling things about what you've built and all of these pieces that are coming together is that way of paying down debt and building wealth need to stop being separate journeys. They need to be coming together. Can you paint a picture of what that is now today looking like for a real person?
Yes. So what we see when the user comes into the experience, 86% take an action on the same day as the first time they come into the experience. There's a 121% lift in an end user receiving guidance and clicking on the event to take action. Most common use time of day is 8 p.m. So
when I send my newsletter.
Exactly. When you have a moment, right?
People are online.
when you've got a moment, we've got to be. So that usage time, coming in, having a different conversation, 61% moving into a completely different financial domain. The data that we're seeing in terms of really crossing the chasm from understanding personally, what does it mean for me? And then taking action and the knowing and the doing happening in the same day. That is so exciting because ultimately all of this, everything we do is about serving the mission of the company and radically improving financial outcomes for the 99% in a couple of minutes.
I've spent the past years just reporting on the rise of agentic AI across financial services. But as the inventor of the 401k for student debt matching, how do you think that this technology is changing financial guidance the most overall?
So one, it's changing the outcome. So 50% of Americans have zero 401k. And really such an honor to execute on the 401k for student debt, because what we see in the data is it's the difference between having 1.5 million and retirement savings versus zero.
It's a big deal.
So let's get hardworking Americans into that. Let's get them into that
everyone
1.5.
Exactly. Well, everyone should be retiring. Exactly. With at least $1 million after working your entire life, right?
Yes.
Essentially, to that point, retiring with dignity.
That's right.
Is huge. But if we can start having people begin their financial guidance journey as holistically as possible from the minute that they enter the workforce, then we can have more Americans retire with dignity.
Yes.
So love that.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you some leadership questions because I'm still so stuck on, like I said, as a 4-year-old entrepreneur, I am always so inspired and respect a decade, right, milestone. So what is a belief about leadership that has changed the most in the last decade for you?
So I think what has changed the most in becoming a founder and having the privilege of working with incredibly talented can-doers who have such grit and such stamina, and what I call wattage and genius and brilliance and dedication, is really understanding while the industry celebrates and as it's such a privilege to sit down with you, Nicole, and 6 years ago and today, we really celebrate founders and CEOs, and it's the team that is so critical to the execution. From the beginning, I've talked about each can-doer leads from his or her own seat, really honoring the team and the people that bring the mission to life every day is so important.
Learning myself. How big is the team now?
So we're about 85 people.
85, okay. Yeah, I was like, you're either at or around 100. Okay, 85. That's incredible to hear, and it's something that I'm learning myself always, is making sure to always have those moments of honoring your team and honoring each other for everything that we're doing, especially making sure you have those moments to slow down because we're always moving so fast. You have built through one of Fintech's hardest fundraising environments. I don't mean to bring back, any past traumas. What did that season teach you about conviction?
Many seasons.
Right, all the seasons.
Yes, all the seasons, right? The first season of seed funding and then Series A. And in our Series B, which was during 2022, which was one of the worst times to raise. And we were incredibly fortunate to have 4 term sheets and Altos, our dream investor, leader around. I think that as a founder, there has to be an irrational conviction. It has to be irrational. The problem that we're solving, I believe, has to be so core to who we are and our purpose, because it is irrational to the data is not in our favor in terms of the funding that goes to female founders. And that conviction of the problem has to be solved, and just continuing to move through the conviction that the problem has to be solved and focusing on the problem and the mission. Once heard one CEO say, just keep going. I think just keep going is a great mantra. And I don't mean going in the same direction.
Right.
Because we're constantly learning and adjusting and responding and leveling up and being stage forward.
Yeah.
But just keep going on a stage forward manner.
Do everything we can here in Fintech FM Media to make sure that Laurel is stage forward always, because of how important the mission. It's something I have learned from you as well, which is just knowing that your conviction and the belief in what you're doing is more important than any single data point or narrative that is always kind of fed to us. And so if you want to change that story, change it yourself. That's something that I've done as well. And same with you. And especially when you have that personal connection to the problem, but just being obsessed with it and keep going. You are now positioned to serve 1 in 2 U.S. workers. Does that feel exciting or like a big responsibility?
Both. So exciting and a big responsibility, not only to serve the user, but to get to the user, to get there, to get in front of them.
Exactly. Through all of the different layers
that
you have to hit.
Yes.
The last time that you were on this show, I asked you to define success in one word. The internet was enjoying this, by the way. I was getting comments from people about this. You said kindness is how you would define success in one word. I've thought about that answer ever since. Why kindness? And has building Candidly over the last decade changed what that word means to you?
Yes, I've thought about it too, because it was a rapid fire and I had no time to think.
I know you just said kindness.
Yes. And so I've reflected on that discussion. And I think it's really important not to conflate kindness with weakness, because it's actually the opposite. Kindness takes strength, and kindness is extended through power. And we have a responsibility to serve our users and to do that with kindness and a judgment-free. And it's one of the reasons our NPS scores are 86. They're phenomenal because we're there to serve. We are here to serve the mission of the company. I'm here to serve my employees. We, in terms of really installing AI within the organization, I had a vibe coding session on a Sunday. And in that vibe coding session, I came out of it with a mandate across the company because I saw a couple of ways we were actually holding our can-doers back. So for example, we didn't have our design system installed. We didn't have access to our code base, which of course we can't for SOC 2 reasons, but we can create a copy and ensure that it's never touches production and that we manage merging, it never goes to, et cetera. I have a responsibility for every employee who exits Candidly to have that logo on their jersey so they can command the highest rates that the market will pay for that person's skill set and capability. But I think kindness, being a founder, has made it more difficult for me to lead with kindness. And it has created more intentionality to show up with an open heart, but also actively communicate that kindness is not weakness internally. Leading with kindness can be unusual for individuals to experience. But I also think it's such an important counterfactual to some of the narrative around leadership. The way we each lead has to be authentic and sincere. What I aspire to extend every day.
At the end of the day, and I'm with you in that becoming an entrepreneur and founder has made kindness harder. When the world's not so kind back, and you have to be exactly like that linebacker, like you said on the last time we were together.
Like a linebacker.
Right.
That's right.
At the end of the day, kindness is a strategy. To your point of it can shock people that you're being kind. There has almost like a shock value. It can almost become even more memorable in that way because people are surprised that you would respond like that. They're almost like taken aback. They're not used to it. So there's that piece of it. But I also think, and also especially for other entrepreneurs listening to this, that do not mistake kindness with exactly weakness, but also there's a difference between kindness and like being nice as well.
There is a difference. That's right.
And because kindness doesn't always look nice. It's kind to give someone real feedback.
That's right.
It's kind to give someone tough love if they're willing to, if they're willing to take it, right?
Yes.
And me too. It's like sometimes as a founder, it's so much easier to just be like, well, this wasn't done right. Might as well just do it myself. But instead, it would be better and your team will only grow and become better if I say, no, it could have been done like this, or hey, here's the feedback, or and that's how they grow and that's how people get excited. And I think that's the same for how you interact with whether you're working with the large enterprise or your like interfaces interacting with the end user. Like how are you making sure that is seen and felt across the board? Because in the world of AI, I think people are looking for more kindness and more soulfulness, and they can feel it down to the content they consume, to the technology that they press a button on, to the SaaS product that they inevitably trust for their holistic financial guidance. So well said. Laurel Taylor, Thank you so much for joining me again on Humans of Fintech. It is such a pleasure. It is so exciting to celebrate your 10-year anniversary, to see Candidly continue to just take off. And thank you for inventing the technology that you have and the impact that it is going to have on America and, and then global domination after that, right?
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Thank you for having me, Nicole.
Of course. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Humans of Fintech. If you loved this and want to hear more from leaders across the fintech industry, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to sign up for the Fintech is Femme newsletter, which you can do at fintechisfemme.co. See you next time.